having thus shown that God is wont to cause hope and comfort to arise to the soul after trouble and humbling for sin, and upon slaying the troubler, both at first conversion and afterwards, after sad declensions, I would now give the reasons of the doctrine. First, to show why God is wont to give comfort after trouble and humbling for sin, or why he is likely to bring the soul into the wilderness before he speaks comfortably to it, and leads it into the valley of Achor before he opens the door of hope. Number one, it is that the soul may be prepared for a confiding application of itself to Christ for comfort. It is the will of God that men should have true hope and comfort conferred upon them in no other way than by Jesus Christ. It is only by him that sinners have comfort at their conversion, and it is by him only that the saints have renewed hope and comfort after their spiritual declension. And therefore, the way to obtain his comfort is to look to him, to fly for refuge to him. And in order to this, persons have need to be brought to a sense of their necessity of him. And that they may be so, it is needful that they should be sensible of their calamity and misery, that they should be in trouble, and be brought to see their utter helplessness in themselves. And not only natural men, but Christians also, who are fallen into sin and are dead and senseless frames, need something to make them more sensible of their necessity of Christ. Indeed, the best are not so sensible of their need of Christ, but that they need to be made more sensible, but especially those who are in an ill and dead frame, and a declining state. They need trouble and humbling to make them sensible of their need of Christ, and to prepare their minds for a renewed confiding application to Christ is their only remedy. The godly in such a case are sick with a sore disease, and Christ is the only physician who can heal them, and they need to be sensible of their disease that they may see their need of a physician. They, as well as natural men, need to be in a storm and tempest to make them sensible of their need to fly to him, who is a hiding place from the wind, a covert from the tempest. A Christian who wanders away from God is like Noah's dove which flew from the ark. She flew about till weary and spent, seeking rest somewhere else, but found no rest for the sole of her foot, and then she returned to the ark. So it is needful that the soul of a godly man who wanders from Christ should become weary and find no rest for the sole of his foot, that so he may see his need of returning to Christ. Therefore it is said concerning the children of Israel in Hosea 2 verse 6, Therefore, behold, I will hedge up your way with thorns, and make a wall that she shall not find her paths. And in our context, Hosea 2 verse 7, She shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. Gracious souls wander from Christ, their husband, following after other lovers. God is wont to bring them into trouble and distress, and make them see that their other lovers cannot help them, that so they may see that it is best for them to return to their first husband. Another end of God in it is that comfort and hope may be the more prized when it is obtained. We see in temporal things that the worth and value of any enjoyment is learned by the lack of it. He who is sick knows the worth of health. He who is in pain knows how to prize ease. He who is in a storm at sea knows how to prize safety on the seashore. And people who are subject to the grievances of war know how to value peace. He who endures the hardships of captivity and slavery is by this taught how to value liberty. And so it is in spiritual things. He who is brought to see his misery in being without hope is prepared to prize hope when it is obtained. He who is brought into distress through fear of hell and God's wrath is the more prepared to prize the comfort which arises from the manifestation of the favor of God and a sense of safety from hell. He who is brought to see his utter emptiness and extreme poverty and necessity, and his perishing condition on that account, is thoroughly prepared to prize and rejoice in the manifestation of the fullness in Christ. And those godly persons who are fallen into corrupt and senseless frames greatly stand in need of something to make them more sensible of their lack of spiritual comfort and hope. Their living as they do shows that they have too little sense of the worth and value of that comfort, and those inestimable spiritual and saving blessings which God has bestowed on them. Otherwise, they never would deal so ungratefully with God, who has bestowed them. If they did not greatly err in slighting spiritual comfort, as the children of Israel did manna, their hearts would never, to such a degree, have gone out after vanity and earthly enjoyments and carnal delight. They need to be brought into trouble and darkness to make them sensible of the worth of hope and comfort, and to teach them to prize it. They need to be brought into the wilderness and left for a time to wander and suffer hunger and thirst in a barren desert, to teach them how to prize their vineyards. A sense of the pardon of sin, and the favor of God, and a hope of eternal life do not afford comfort and joy to the soul any further than they are valued and prized, so that the trouble and darkness which go before comfort serve to render the joy and comfort the greater when it is obtained, and so are in mercy to those for whom God intends comfort. It is so ordered that divine power and grace may be acknowledged in giving hope and comfort. There is naturally in men an exceeding insensibility of their dependence on God, and a great disposition to ascribe those things which they enjoy to themselves, to second causes. This disposition reigns in natural men. They are wholly under the power of it. Therefore they need to be taught their own helplessness and utter insufficiency and utter unworthiness. Otherwise, if hope and comfort should be bestowed upon them, they would surely ascribe all to themselves, or the creature, and so would be lifted up by it, and would not give God the glory. Therefore it is God's manner first to humble sinners before he comforts them, and all this self-confident disposition is not extirpated out of the hearts of the godly, and especially when they get into ill frames, it prevails. It is very requisite that before any remarkable comfort is bestowed upon them, that they should be the subjects of renewed humbling. They need renewedly to see what helpless creatures they are. That so, when light is bestowed, they may be sensible how it is owing to God and not to themselves or any other, and that they may, by their troubles and humblings, be prepared the more to admire God's power and mercy, and free and rich grace to them. While men are continued in fullness in a fruitful land, they will not learn their own helplessness, and therefore God will cast them out of this fullness into a wilderness. This is plainly intimated to be the reason of God so dealing with the children of Israel, as is said in the text. The church of Israel, before God thus led her into the wilderness, did not ascribe her comforts to God, as in the 8th verse. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, but they ascribed them to her idols. And in verse 12, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. For this reason it is that God takes away those things, as in verse 9, therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time of it, and my wine in the season of it. It will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. In verses 11 and 12, I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, in which she has said, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me, and I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. I took them away and turned her vineyards into a forest, and made her sensible that they were from him, and then he restored them again. For these reasons God is wont to bring souls into trouble and to humble them for sin before he comforts them. Wholly under the power of it. I will now give the reasons why hope and comfort are not obtained till sin, which is the troubler, is slain. While sin is harbored and preserved alive, it tends to provoke God to frown and express his anger. Sin is God's mortal enemy. It is that which a soul infinitely hates, and to which he is an irreconcilable enemy. And therefore, if we harbor this and suffer it to live in our hearts, and to govern our practice, we can expect no other than it will provoke God's frowns. and especially
Spiritual
when they get
comfort
into ill
consists in the
frames,
manifestation of
it
God's
prevails.
favor.
It is very
and in
requisite
friendly
that
communion with
before
God.
any remarkable comfort
But how can
is
we
bestowed
expect this at
upon
the same
them
time
that they
that
should
we
be
harbor
the
his
subjects
mortal
of
enemy?
renewed
We see what God said to
They need
Joshua while
renewally to
Achan
see
was
what
alive,
helpless
Joshua
creatures they
7:12.
That's so.
Neither will I be with
When
you
light is
anymore,
bestowed,
except
they
you
may be
destroy
sensible
the
how it
accursed
is owing to
thing from
God and
among
not to
you.
themselves or any other.
Number 2, the natural
And that
tendency
they
of
may,
sin is
by
to
their troubles
darken
and
the
humblings,
mind,
be prepared to more
and trouble the
admire God's
conscience.
power and mercy.
There is nothing which
and
wounds
free
a
and
well-informed
rich grace to
conscience
them.
but sin.
Well, men are continued
Sin
in
is the enemy
fullness
of
and a
grace,
fruitful
and
land.
therefore
They
the
will not
natural
learn their own
tendency of it is to
helplessness.
oppose and keep
And
down
therefore
the
God will cast
exercises
them
of
out of
grace.
this fullness into
And so
a
to
wilderness.
extinguish spiritual comfort.
This is plainly intimated
For
to be
spiritual
the
comfort
reason of
comes in
God
no
so
other
dealing
way
with
than
the
by the
children of
exercise
Israel,
of grace,
as
which
it said in
prevents the
text.
exercises of grace,
The
darkens
church
the
of
evidences
Israel
of a
before
man's
God
good
thus led her
estate.
into the wilderness.
For there are no
did not
evidences
ascribe her
of this
comforts
but
to
the
God,
exercises of grace.
as in the 8th
Sin does
verse.
as much tend to
For
keep
she
out
did not
spiritual
know that I gave her
comforts,
corn
as
and
clouds
wine
tend
and
to
oil,
hide the light of the
and
sun.
multiplied her silver
And
and
therefore
gold.
it is necessary
But
that
they
this
ascribed
should be
them to her
removed in order to
idols.
our
And
receiving
in verse
light
12,
comfort.
these are my rewards that my lovers have given me.
It is
For
impossible
this
in its own
reason it
nature
is
that
God
any should
takes
have
away
spiritual
those
light and
things,
comfort before sin
as in
is
verse
mortified.
9. Therefore, while
If
I
sinners
return
had
and take
comfort
away
while
my
sin
corn
is
and
in
the
reigning
time of
power,
it, and my wine in the
it could
season
not be
of it,
spiritual
and will
comfort.
recover my
For
wool
spiritual
and my
comfort
flax
is the
given
same
to
with
cover
gracious
her
comfort.
nakedness.
But now
And
can there be
verses 11
gracious
and
comfort
12, where
where I will
grace
also
has
cause
no place,
all her mirth?
but if there be grace,
sin will
cease.
not be in
Her
reigning
feast
power,
days,
for the
her
nature
new
of
moons,
grace
and her
is to
Sabbath,
mortify sin.
and all her solemn
And
feasts.
as there can be no
And
spiritual
I will
comfort
destroy her
without a
vines
degree
and
of
her fig trees,
mortification
in
of
which
sin
she
and
hath
those
said,
in whom sin is
These are my
mortified.
rewards
Spiritual
that my
comfort
lovers have
cannot
given
be
me.
any more
And I
than
will
in
make them a
proportion
forest,
as sin
and the beasts
is
of the field shall
mortified.
eat
Number
them.
3,
A
I
hope
took them
of
away
eternal
and turned her
life is given
vineyards
before
into
the
a flame of
forest, and
sin
made her
would be
sensible
misinproved,
that they were from him.
and then he restored them again.
If it were
For these
possible,
reasons,
then
God
a
is
son
wont to
could
bring
obtain
souls
entitled
into
to eternal
trouble and to
life
humble them for sin
before
sin
was
was
mortified.
mortified. And so could
I will
have
now
his
give
own
the
safety
reasons
and
why hope
God's
and
favor
comfort are not
manifested
obtained
to
till
him.
sin, which is
He
the
would
trouble
only
or
improve it
slain.
to encourage and
While
embolden
sin is
himself
harbored
in
and
sin.
preserved
Hope
alive,
if
it
they-
tends to
it
provoke
then
God to
would have a
frown and
pernicious
express his
influence
anger
and
tendency.
sin is God's mortal
Until sin
enemy.
is slain,
It
he
is that
stand
which
in need
is
of
soul
fear to
infinitely
restrain
hates,
sin.
to which he is an
If fear were once gone
irreconcilable
before
enemy.
sin is slain,
And
they
therefore,
would
if we
soon run
harbor
into
this
all
and
manner of
suffer to live in
wickedness
our
and
hearts
without restraint,
and to govern our
and
practice,
so Christians
we can
themselves,
expect no other
while
than it
they
will
will
provoke
corrupt
God's
frowns.
frowns.
They stand in need
Spiritual
of fear
comfort
to
consists
restrain
in the
sin.
manifestation of
For
God's
at such
favor
times love is in a
and
great
in friendly
degree
communion
dormant.
with God. But how can we expect
It is
that
of
at the same
necessity
time
the
that
person
we harbor
should
his
have
mortal
some principle
enemy?
or other to restrain
We see
them
what
from
God
sin.
said to Joshua, while
But there is
Achan
no
was
principle
alive,
which can be
Joshua
effectual to
7:12.
restrain men from sin
Neither
any
will I
further
be with you
than it
anymore,
is
except you
an
destroy the
exercise.
accursed thing from
If
among
love is
you.
not an exercise, it will
Number
not
2, the natural
restrain
tendency
men.
of sin
So
is
that
to
at such
darken
times
the
the saints
mind
need fear
and trouble the conscience.
And
There is
therefore
nothing
God
which
has
wounds a
wisely ordered
well-informed
it,
conscience
that at
but
such times
sin.
their evidences
Sin
should
is
be
the enemy of
darkened,
grace, and therefore
their
the natural
hopes
tendency of
clouded,
it is to
that
oppose
they
and
may
keep
have
down
fear
the
when love is
exercises
not
of
awake,
grace,
to restrain
and so
them.
to extinguish
The
spiritual
godly
comfort.
themselves, if their hope were
For
all
spiritual
alive
comfort comes in no other way than by the exercise of grace, which prevents the exercises of grace, darkens the evidences of a man's good estate.
And take
For there are no
encouragement from it
evidences
to
of
indulge
this
in
but the
their
exercises
lusts,
of grace.
or at least to be the
Sin
less
does as
careful
much
to restrain
tend to
and
keep out
resist
spiritual
them.
comforts,
For we see that
clouds
in such
tend to
frames,
hide the light of the
though
sun,
their hopes are clouded,
and therefore it
and
is
they have a
necessary
considerable
that this
degree
should
of
be
fear,
removed in order
yet
to
they are
our
careless
receiving
and
light and
negligent.
comfort.
But how much more so would they be if they
It
had
is
no
impossible
fear
in
to
its own
restrain
nature
them.
that any should have spiritual light and comfort before sin is
Application
mortified.
1.
If
A
sinners
use
had comfort while
of
sin is in
instruction.
reigning power,
Hence we may observe
it
the
could not
wonderful
be
wisdom of
spiritual
God in His
comfort.
dealing with the
For
souls
spiritual
of men.
comfort is the same with
When we
gracious
consider what has
comfort.
been said,
But now can there
with
be
the
gracious
reasons of
comfort where
we may
grace
see
has
just
no
cause
place?
to admire the divine
But if there be
wisdom in
grace,
His
sin will not be in
dealings
reigning power, for
with
the
respect
nature
to
of
those
grace
for whom
is
He
to mortify
intends
sin.
comfort.
And as there can be
His
no
wisdom
spiritual
is
comfort
that without a degree of mortification of sin in those in whom sin is mortified. Spiritual comfort cannot be any more than in proportion as sin is mortified. Number 3 is the hope of eternal life, if given before the slaying of sin, would be misimproved and abused. If it were possible possible that a sinner could obtain a title to eternal life,
taken away their
before sin was mortified,
in which they
and so could have his own safety and God's favor manifested to him. He would only improve it to encourage and embolden himself in comfort. Hope if they then would have a pernicious influence and tendency until sin is slain, they stand in need of fear to restrain sin. If fear were once gone before sin is slain, they would soon run into all manner of wickedness and without restraint. And so Christians themselves, while they're in a corrupt frame, they stand in need of fear to restrain sin. For at such times love is in a great degree dormant. It is of necessity that persons should have some principle or other to restrain them from sin. But there is no principle which can be effectual to restrain men from sin any further than it is an exercise. If love is not an exercise, it will not restrain men, so that at such times the saints need fear. And therefore God has wisely ordered it, that at such times their evidences should be darkened, and their hopes clouded, that they may have fear when love is not awake, to restrain them. The godly themselves, that their hope were all alive in those times when they are in a carnal and thoughtless frame, and grace is asleep, would be in greater danger to abuse their hope, and take encouragement from it to indulge their lusts, or at least to be the less careful to restrain and resist them. For we see that in such frames, though their hopes are clouded, and they have a considerable degree of fear, yet they are careless and negligent. But how much more so would they be if they had no fear to restrain them? Application 1. A use of instruction. Hence we may observe the wonderful wisdom of God in His dealing with the souls of men. When we consider what has been said, with the reasons of it, we may see just cause to admire the divine wisdom in His ordinary dealings with respect to those for whom He intends comfort. His wisdom is admirable in His dealings with natural men, and fitting in preparing them for comfort, and bringing them into such troubles and distress, and hedging up their way with thorns, as it is expressed in the context, and leaving them in their distress to follow after their lovers, their idols, without being able to overtake them, and taking away their vineyards and all the things in which they trusted, and making them a forest, and so showing them what poor, destitute, helpless creatures they are, before He gives them comfort. And so we may well admire the divine wisdom in His method of dealing with His saints, who decline and fall into sin, or get into corrupt frames and ill ways. God knows how to order things concerning them, and there is a marvelous wisdom observable in His manner of dealing with them in such cases. We may well admire how wisely God ordered things in what has been said for His own glory, to secure the glory due to His power and free grace, and to bring men to a sense of their dependence on Him, and to ascribe all to Him. And how He ordered things for the glory of His Son, that He may have all the glory of the salvation of men, who is worthy of it, and that He has laid down His life for their salvation. And also how wisely God ordered things for the good of His own elect people, how He brings good out of evil and light out of darkness. How wisely He consults their good and comfort in those things which appear to them to be most against them. How He wisely prepares them for good, and makes way for their receiving comfort, and for its being the more sweet, the more prized and delighted in when it is obtained. And oftentimes in bringing about this and those things, which they think at the time to be signs of God's hatred, and how wisely God ordered things for preventing men's abusing the sense of their own safety, to giving the reins to their lusts. It is ordered so that at those times when sin prevails, and there would be danger of this, the evidences of their safety are hid from their eyes, and the fear of hell comes on to keep them in awe, and that hope and comfort should be given only at such times and in such manner that they should have influence to draw men off from sin, and to prompt them to diligence and duty in the service of God, and that, when it would have most of this tendency, then they should have most of it. When we consider these things, we may well cry out with the apostle, "O the depth, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out." Secondly, hence we may learn that souls who are in darkness, and as it were in a wilderness, have no cause to be discouraged. For by the doctrine we learn that this is a way off and in order to hope and comfort. Persons are very often ready to be discouraged by this. God seems to frown. They have a sense of his anger. They cry to him, and he does not seem to hear their prayers. They have been striving for relief, but it seems to be to no purpose. They are in such circumstances that everything looks dark. Everything seems to be against them. They are lost in a wilderness. They cannot find a way out. They have gone round and returned again to the same place. They don't know which way to turn themselves or what to do. Their hearts are ready to sink. But you may gather encouragement from this doctrine, for by it you may learn that you have no cause to despair. For it is frequently God's manner to bring persons into such circumstances in order to prepare them for hope and comfort. The children of Israel were ready to be discouraged at the Red Sea when they saw Pharaoh and his hosts pursuing them, but it was only to prepare them for the greater joy after their deliverance. Joshua and the hosts of Israel were ready to be discouraged when they were smitten at Ai, as you may see in Joshua 7:5, so that you who are in the wilderness may take encouragement from this, still earnestly to seek God, and hope for light and comfort in his time. Application 2. A usefulness of self-examination. By this persons may try their hopes and comforts, whether they are of the right kind. If they are such as have arisen after the manner as is spoken of in the doctrine, if it is a hope which you found in the valley of Achor, in the sense which has been explained, it is a sign that it is a hope which God has given you, and so a hope which you are not to cast away, but which you are to retain and rejoice in and bless God for it. Therefore, particularly inquire concerning your hopes and comforts, whether they have arisen in your souls when humbled for sin, and in the slaying of sin. Inquire whether your hopes and comforts have been given you upon your souls being humbled for sin. You may try it by these 3 things. 1. Whether you have seen what a miserable, helpless creature you were when your hopes and comforts risen in your heart. Has it been upon your souls receiving such a sight of yourself, or has your hope been accompanied with such a sense of soul? When hope was given at first, was it implanted in a heart, thus prepared? And when you have had remarkable comfort and joy from time to time, has joy been accompanied with such a sense and frame of mind? At the same time that you have had a strong hope of God's favor and that Christ was yours, have you been nothing in your own eyes? Have you at such times appeared to yourself to be a poor, little, helpless, unworthy creature, deserving nothing at the hands of God? And do not only inquire whether in your own apprehension you had some such sight of yourself at first, before your first comfort. If you ever had a right understanding of yourself, of your own heart, and your own state, you will never wholly lose it. It will revive from time to time. If you had it when you received your first comfort, the same sense will come again. When your comforts are revived, this will revive with them. If the first joy was granted to a heart thus prepared, there will from time to time be a sense of your own emptiness and worthlessness arising with your joys and comforts. It will be a deep sense of what a poor, miserable, and exceeding sinful creature you are. The true comfort is wont to come in such a manner.